I wish I knew this before I bought a 1911. Welcome back to LocaCarnivore, the hunting, guns, and adventure channel for smart people. Today, I'm going to tell you a story. What I wish I knew before I bought a 1911. First of all, I want to get this out of the way. This is not an anti-1911 rant. Believe me, I like the gun, but there are some things that I wish somebody had told me or I had been able to find out before I bought one of these. By the way, you like my old M1 steel helmet here? Big shout out to old Big Al for letting me have this. I don't know if he wore this particular one in the ETO, but it's been a keepsake and I've always cherished it. But since we have 1911s on the set today, you gotta go with the old hardware. All right, let me take you back, way back at this point, to the late 1980s. At that time I had two handguns, an old Smith & Wesson Model 58 in .357 Magnum, which I still wish I had. This is going to be a long list of guns that got away. Another one that I had, my second handgun, was a model Smith & Wesson Model 659 in 9mm. That's the old Heimer fired. It was all stainless steel, not the alloy frame yet, so this thing was heavy, double stacked, 16 rounds I believe actually, and great gun, really liked it. So this is back in the late 80s, and about 1987 or so, the FBI shootout in Miami had just occurred. It was about a year old or so, and you go look that up, but you'll remember there was several FBI agents that were killed by a couple of bank robbery suspects they decided to try to arrest in Miami. A big fiasco, a lot of fallout from that, but one of the biggest issues was everybody suddenly decided the 9mm is not enough. Oh God, this is a terrible cartridge. And I was really plugged into, reading Guns and Ammo and all the other gun magazines I could get my hands on. And Jeff Cooper was the god back then of guns, especially defensive handguns. And I had read his books, always kept up with his articles and his columns. And that all influenced me towards thinking, well, that 9mm is not going to be enough, so I need to find a 45. And what kind of 45? Well, again, listening to Jeff Cooper, the high priest of the 1911 cult, it seemed like the 1911 was the right way to go. Anybody who knew anything about guns, especially defensive handguns, used a 1911, at least in Mr. Cooper's opinion. So I vowed at one point to go out and find a 1911 to replace the 659 9mm that I had, which was a perfectly good gun, mind you. I really liked it, but no, I was convinced this is what I had to have. So I went ahead, and one day, lo and behold, I was looking through at a gun store, and there in the case was a Colt Combat Elite. This particular is not that gun, but I wanted to show it to you. This is a Springfield Ronin. So it was similar. It was a stainless steel frame with a blued slide. So it was a really attractive gun. And I fell in love with it right away and said, just had to have it. So I plunked my money down and did the paperwork and ran out of the store after with it going, hey, I've got a 1911. I am somebody now. And Jeff Cooper is going to be so proud of me, even though we've never met and he has no idea I exist. But this is what's going on in your head at that time. So like I said, I fell in love with that Combat Elite, and little did I know at the time, but this was going to be the first of what would become many 1911s in my lifetime. I had 10mm Delta Elite back when 10mm came out. That's another story in and of itself, but let's just say that since the FBI, 45 looked like the deal, and then suddenly 10mm was the deal because the FBI adopted it, so you had to have a 10mm, so I found a 10mm, and while there were other ones out there, like a 1006 from Smith & Wesson, which was a really good gun, and I really liked it. One of my friends had one, I really liked it. I decided I had to be consistent, which was a good thing, same action and all that, so I found one in the 1911 platform, and then after a while realized that that was a pain to carry around, so I got an officer's ACP, and that's another story in and of itself as well. But just to let you know, I've had quite a few of these. So I'm sure no matter what I say about this in this video, the 1911 fanboys are going to be all over me, all over the comments section. In fact, oh, here I think they're coming too. I think they're coming. I think they're right outside the house. So let's get into it. I'm going to share with you the things that I wish I had known before I bought a 1911. Well, first of all, 1911s, these things are heavy. I mean, nobody told me about how heavy these things are. You know, 39 to 40 ounces, depending on 45 is about 39 ounces. The 10 millimeters is a 10 millimeter. They'll go out the door, they're on the scale at about 40 pounds, give or take, mainly because the barrel's a little thicker. So they're heavy. And 39 ounces is a lot of gun, and that's empty. When you load these up with ammunition, they're what, 45, 46, 47 ounces. They're really heavy guns. Now, of course, this was back in the day when that's how guns were generally made. Steel frame, steel slide, steel everything, wood grips, like on this mil-spec here. You know, they all were that way. So you really didn't question it, but when you started carrying one, you started to realize just how much gun you were lugging around. And yes, there were alloy frame guns out there, like, you know, the Smith & Wesson 59 and 39 series would come out around that time with aluminum frames. The Beretta 92 was available, the SIG 226, among others. So those had alloy frames, but until Glock made their appearance in 89, 90 in the United States, polymer was a very experimental thing and it wasn't mainstream, so we just didn't have that kind of gun. So you just had to carry this weight around. But boy, I wish I knew it was this darn heavy. Now, these things I'm talking about as far as what I wish I knew about 1911s before I got one, this is going to be in order going from the least problematic to the thing that I wish I knew the most before I got a 1911. So the next thing I wish I knew before I bought a 1911 was that they're best served in 45 ACP. This is a Springfield mil-spec 1911 45 ACP. And that is, it's because it's the most reliable cartridge. The platform was originally designed by John Moses Browning. There is a name from the Pantheon. John Moses Browning designed this gun for the 45. And that's the problem when you have guns that are designed for a particular cartridge and then you try to rechamber them. Now, when they went to 10 millimeter, it was relatively successful as far as reliability, because the 10 millimeter cartridge is roughly as long as the 45 ACP. Not a lot of geometry problems. But the 9 millimeter guns, you either get a good one or you get a problematic one. So again, they're best served in 45 ACP, something I wouldn't find out until later. I wish I knew that the full-size guns were the most reliable in the platform. Also, the commander size guns with the 4 1/4 inch barrel, the full-size guns have a 5 inch, commanders have a 4 1/4 inch barrel. They're reliable too, but when you get into the subcompacts, which back in the day was the officer's ACP, the one I had was terrible. It was a very unreliable gun. And no matter who I took it to, nobody could get it to run right. And maybe it was just that gun, but I've heard a lot of other people, experts in the field, who have said that you have to be very careful with those guns and set them up exactly right in order for them to work correctly. And I really believe that based on my experience. Next thing I wish I had known about the 1911 before I bought one is the thumb safety. And these are all safety checked. The thumb safety is something that you have to train yourself to use correctly. Basically, you have to learn how to use this. It has to become instinctive so that when you present the gun on target, that thumb safety comes off. And I'm going to get a bunch of crap for not having my thumb high. Hey, Masad Ayub says you can put your thumb low. He's a good guy. I like the thumb low. It works better for my hands. If you've got big mitts and you can keep your thumb up there, that's fine with me. Do what you want. Your mileage may vary. But oh, here come the fanboys again. All right, so you have to train to get this instinctive, so you get that safety on and off. That's a lot of clicking, sorry about that noise, but you got to train so you get that safety on and off intuitively. When the gun comes up out of the holster, it's got to come off and as you come on target and you're ready to shoot. And then you have to be able to put it back on safe when you disengage. So there's a lot of training time with the 1911. This is not a point and shoot thing. And I had started on revolvers, like I said, that Model 58, Smith & Wesson 357, and it took some time. So basically you're just sitting there when you're watching TV or have some, slack time, and you're just flicking this thing on and off and on and off. So it's something you do have to deal with. And the other thing is, the safeties nowadays have big shelves on them, but this is the safety, like on this mil-spec, is what Colt put on the guns starting basically in the 1980s roughly, and it's a little bit bigger than the original military one, which is a little bump, and I don't think you can probably see that very well. Alright, so hopefully you can see this safety. It's very small. It's very small. And you have to get your thumb right on it. But on the flip side, it doesn't gouge your side or anything when you're carrying the gun up against your body. But that's another thing we had to deal with back in the day. Yet another thing I wish somebody had told me, or I wish I knew before I bought a 1911, and that is the grip safety on the back. Now, John Browning, when he designed the gun originally, didn't feel it was necessary, but the U.S. Cavalry, who were the driving force in small arms procurement for the United States Army back in the day, in the early 20th century, they thought they needed a grip safety. They wanted a system where if a cavalry trooper dropped this gun, it went inert immediately. And they didn't trust the fact that the thumb safety was there. They were worried that the safety would be off, but the camera would be cocked after having shot a couple of rounds or something, and the trooper might lose control of the gun. It falls to the ground. They didn't want it going off. Never mind the fact that John Browning, in trials, and Colt, they demonstrated over and over again this gun generally would not go off if it was dropped, even with the safety off. And with the safety on, it was really safe gun, but they put the grip safety on. So it seems superfluous to me and to everybody else, but there it is, and it's become a 1911 thing ever since. Nobody's changed the design, but it seems clunky, and it's also, you risk, especially if you have the thumb high grip, which is why I don't like that, is you risk not depressing the grip safety, and the gun may not fire when you want it to fire. So that's why they put all these gimmicks like a memory bump and all this other stuff on the back there, so that when you have your thumb high, which again I don't like, you most likely will get on the grip safety. But even with the memory bump, with my hands at least, with the thumb high grip, I don't always engage that grip safety. So that's why I put the thumb down, first of all, to make sure I've got a firm grip and depress it. It took me a while to understand why the grip safety is your friend. First of all, yes, the gun is inert if you drop it. Second of all, and more importantly, second of all, and to my mind very importantly, it helps you holster the weapon in a very safe fashion. So generally you're going to carry the gun cocked and locked, hammer back, thumb safety on. I have to credit Masad Ayub for showing this on a video not too long ago that I watched at any rate. And that is, you put your thumb up on the hammer, which totally gets it away, the heel of your palm away from the grip safety, and then you can put the gun in the holster that way. So even if something were to contact the trigger on the way into the holster, that grip safety is rendered the gun inert, and it's not going to go off. So it makes the gun very, very safe. In fact, I've always told people the 1911, if you know what you're doing, is one of the safest pistols ever designed. But if you don't know what you're doing with it, it could hurt you in a heartbeat. So that's one of the things, if you understand it and you can use that to your advantage, it makes it a very safe gun. Yet another thing I wish I knew before I bought a 1911. This gun, compared to especially modern guns like striker guns, polymer guns that we're all used to now, if you didn't grow up and have these types of guns when you were learning about guns, and you're just used to the polymer stuff that you can basically treat it like garbage and it'll still work, these are different. This is a very maintenance intensive gun compared to those guns. You've got to take care of it. You've got to make sure it's clean. You've got to make sure it's well oiled. In fact, OPEC loves this gun because of how much oil you got to run. I'm being facetious, of course, but you do have to have the gun lubricated. That's the main thing. In fact, I was watching a video the other day. Bill Wilson on his channel, Wilson Combat Channel, was saying how to maintain the gun, and he said that it's more important that the gun be lubricated than it be squeaky clean. In fact, he said you can go 200 or so rounds between cleanings, major cleanings, as long as the gun's got oil, you're not going to get yourself in trouble. So that's something to consider with the 1911. Now, one of the biggest things I wish I knew about the 1911 before I bought one is the fact that the older ones, especially the Colts and whatnot, unless they're set up exactly right, they hate hollow points. that Combat Elite, I mean, this is a mil spec from Springfield. This gun was produced just a few years ago. I mean, but that Combat Elite I had, that gun was produced probably in the early to mid 1980s, because remember, it was used. I didn't ever do a check on the VIN. I didn't ever do a check on the serial number with Colt, but just based on, you know, when the model came out and all that, that's when it was built. And I had a gunsmith who had a very good reputation in the Denver area go through that gun, because it would not feed hollow points very well at all. It was very unreliable. And that's because the gun, originally the design process started in about 1905. This is a 120-year-old design at this point, roughly. And there was no concept of hollow point ammunition for handguns at that point in time. It was designed to run with full metal jacket, round nose military ammunition. When fed that ammunition and properly maintained, they're pretty darn reliable. But hollow points, now I would say that the modern guns though, manufacturers have kind of found the witchcraft they need to apply to these guns on the assembly line. Most of them you get are pretty good with hollow points. In fact, this mil spec, I haven't done a full check yet, and we're going to do a video on this to see how it handles hollow points. It's done pretty good when used for gel testing and things like that. And things like this Ronin Commander from Springfield, they call it their 4.5 inch, 4.25 inch, because they can't use Commander because that's a Colt brand. It's probably trademarked. But at any rate, it's been fine with hollow points too. It just loves them. There's no issues at all. But this has an integral ramp built into the barrel, unlike the old lockup system. And I'll show you some B-roll here of how the barrel on the original 1911 was designed to work versus how the integral ramp, i.e. what Browning went to for the P35, the next design after the 1911, fixed a lot of that problem. And so these guns with the ramps, the integral ramps and the supported chambers, are quite reliable. The standard lockup barrel configurations, they have to be done just exactly right, and the gun has to be assembled correctly and fitted correctly, and then they're usually pretty reliable. Something else I wish I knew before I bought a 1911, and that is everybody's hung up on the full-size government model with the 5-inch barrel. Admittedly, this is the original. It's probably the better design overall. It's certainly very durable with a steel frame. However, I have to say that the Commander size is really my favorite, and it's where this is the sweet spot on the gun. The officer's ACPs, the subcompacts, tend to be problematic on reliability, but the Commander style guns with the 4.25, 4¼ inch long barrels, but the standard grip size, they're absolutely fantastic. And this one's a lightweight with the aluminum frame. To be honest with you, this is what they should have originally done. Instead of this, they should have come up with this. And that's because it's much lighter than the full-size government model. That shorter barrel is easier to get out of the holster quickly under a draw. And it also, just for me at least, it points better. It's a very handy, quick gun. It's quick on target, but it's still got a long enough sight radius that you can get a good sight picture, and consistently accurate sight picture at that, especially under stress. So this is the sweet spot, and I get it. At the time that this gun was designed, alloy frames were basically science fiction. But if they had had the technology, I think they would have gone with something like this, and Browning and the U.S. Army should have done something like this. Now, before I get to the number one thing I wish I knew about the 1911 before I bought one, I just have to really quick ask you, support us on Patreon. The link's down in the description there. Give us a big thumbs up, like the video. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. And also make sure you ring that bell so you'll get notified of all the new videos that come out. Now, for the moment you've been waiting for, the number one thing I wish I had known about 1911s before I bought one, and that is the fanboys. Why the fanboys? Because they are, you know, if you like the 1911, that's great, but just don't be a fanboy. This is a mechanical device. It's a 120-plus-year-old design. It is not a gift from Mount Olympus. It was not handed down from anywhere on high. It's just a mechanical device developed by a human being, and quite a few human beings actually, and it has to be assembled correctly and maintained correctly. And it's a great gun. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great gun, but It's not the best gun ever properly designed, and modern designs have gone beyond what this gun is capable of. That's not to say it's not good. That's why it's still around. It's probably never going to die, frankly. And I think that's a good thing. I give the fanboys a little slack, though. I realize that some of them have just discovered opposable thumbs, and they are feeling overconfident. Well, despite all of this that I've said, I love the 1911. It is such a fantastic gun. It is beautiful to shoot. Oh, the triggers on this. No other semi-automatic gun out there has a trigger like a well-sorted 1911. It is so easy to shoot, keep on target in rapid fire, and to shoot accurately. It's a fantastic gun. Yeah, you can go all day long about how it's low capacity and it's clunky and it's old, and those are all valid comments. But at the end of the day, it's still a super gun. I like the lighter weight ones because they're easy to carry. And so I've learned to love this gun, much like I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. And while I love the gun, I still can't say that about the fanboys, though. I'm sorry. And a quick reminder, please share this video. That really helps us out a lot. What's your 1911 story? I'd love to hear about it. Go in the comments and share it with me, would you? So once again, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking your valuable time to watch us at the LocaCarnivore. And I'll leave you with two very important things to remember. Number one, the ultimate act of resistance is insisting upon facts. The second, you know it's coming, Han shot first. What is up with these helmets? God, they're heavy. I can't imagine having to carry this on your head day in and day out in combat. This is just insane. I mean, these things are just so damn heavy. I got a lot of respect for the guys that had to wear these things. I'll tell you what, thank you so much. We can never, ever repay you or thank you enough.